provides to our warfighters and the Department of Defense. Thank you for all three of you for being here today. The United States faces grave security threats today, from terrorism threats to aggression by nation states to cyber attacks. The intelligence community provides our military with critical information across the full spectrum of conflict. Yet when the IC and DOD do not integrate effectively, we risk intelligence failures that put our warfighters' lives at risk. We are here today because the DOD and the IC have failed to adequately respond to the concerns raised by this committee on a range of critical national security issues, including those raised by the committee during the Worldwide Threats hearing this past February. The committee is alarmed by the manipulation of intelligence at U.S. Central Command, as we documented in our August report. Further, an ongoing committee investigation has found that the DOD and the IC facilities planning has been plagued by significant flaws, including disregard for more cost-effective alternatives. Despite repeatedly raising these concerns, the committee has not seen any meaningful corrective actions by the DOD or the IC. I want to thank the Department of Defense Inspector General's Office for their ongoing investigations into both of these issues. Once they are complete, I will invite the IG to present their findings in open session. If necessary, we may ask the three of you to return following the conclusion of those investigations. I also commend the work of the Government Accountability Office, which recently released a report finding that the Department of Defense did not follow best practices when conducting its Joint Intelligence Analysis Complex Consolidation Analysis of Alternatives process. Thank you for being here, and with that, I would like to recognize the ranking member for any opening comments he would like to make. Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to get used to this new committee and the lap of luxury here in Ways and Means. First, I want to thank you all for your many years of service to the country, indeed decades of service to the country. Director Clapper, in particular, I want to thank you for honorably serving us since the 1960s, first as an Air Force officer, later as Director of DIA, NGA, and as Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and of course for the last 6 years of DNI. You took a position that was still very much in the process of formation, and gave it very substantive and effective content, and we're very grateful for all you have done. You've always exhibited sober judgment and put the fate of the nation first. I hope that as you look back on your career, you don't lament your many appearances before us. We certainly don't. You know, there was a rumor out there that you might be asked to stay on a little longer during the transition. I'm hoping you will stay on a little longer, maybe 4 years longer. But that's probably the last thing you want to hear. Deputy Secretary of Work and Undersecretary Lettra, I also want to thank you for your extraordinary service for the country. We're very grateful to both of you, and I look forward to our continued work together and whatever plans come to you both down the road. As we near the end of the Congress, now is an appropriate time to reflect on the values that shape our work and how those are manifest in the national security domain. Our country is best served when we put aside partisanship and conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the American people. This requires a commitment to intellectual honesty, respect for the rule of law, and a willingness to accept accountability for our mistakes, the responsibility to learn from them, and the commitment to avoid repeating them. As we've done on this committee, we must all work together to solve problems on a bipartisan, really nonpartisan basis. The intelligence community and at times the military operate in the shadows, but that in no way diminishes our responsibility to ensure that we act according to these principles. In fact, the responsibility is even greater. At home, we rely on our military and intelligence community to be nonpartisan, objective, and honest about the challenges we face. And that candor is what allows the most senior leaders in this country to make hard choices about how to protect Americans. Abroad, even as we engage in espionage and warfare to protect ourselves and our allies and world stability itself, we again rely on the IC and the military to comport with the rule of law and the highest moral standards. Even in the shadows, we must all act as if you're very much in the spotlight, because you are. The world often sees what we're doing. The intelligence committees do our best to shine a light in a constructive way. The people expect and deserve an intelligence community and military that are responsive and transparent as possible to the public and open to the oversight committees. The Intelligence Oversight Committees in Congress act as a critical check on the most secret activities of the IC and the DOD, and also provide oversight, we hope sound judgment, and ultimately either authorization or disapproval. Each of us must continually seek to strike the right balance between protecting privacy and civil liberties and ensuring our security. That balance is not always clear, it is never a bright line, and nor have we always achieved it to perfection, but it always must be our goal in the IC, in the Department of Defense, and here in Congress. So today I look forward to a far-reaching discussion about how the IC can and does support the Department of Defense as we on HPSI pursue our meaningful, comprehensive, and bipartisan oversight of the critical work that you all do now and into the future. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman for yielding back. I want to let the witnesses know that we do have your opening statements for the record. I want to keep your opening statements to no more than 5 minutes because we have a lot of questions, and I think we will have a series of votes, and so I want to get through as many of those questions as possible. And who's going to start off? Director Clapper, will you start off? Director Clapper, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Nunes, Ranking Member Schiff, members of the committee, and thanks to the Ranking Member for your very gracious comments. I submitted my letter of resignation last night, which felt pretty good. I got 64 days left, and I think I'd have a hard time with my wife, anything past that. Thanks for having us here today to discuss the intelligence community's support to the Department of Defense. I'm joined today, of course, by my friend and colleague, Deputy Secretary of Defense Bob Work, and my partner, Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence Marcel Lettre, two men whom I greatly admire. And we'll certainly do our best to discuss as much of the IC support to the department in this unclassified environment, obviously noting that some details may require follow-up in a classified setting. In my written statement, I included a brief update on some of the national security challenges that this committee knows well. So in the interest of time, I think I'll skip by those. You're well familiar with them. Just as a stage setter for the constant challenges that we face. As I said before this committee many times, our nation's facing the most diverse array of threats that I've seen in my 53-plus years in the intelligence business. And that's what makes the topic of this hearing so important. Never before have the intelligence community and the Department of Defense needed to work so closely. We have a shared responsibility to keep our nation safe and secure. I have a long history of serving in the department in intelligence roles, to include as the Director of Intelligence for 3 of the combatant commands, as Director of both DIA and NGA for almost 9 years, as Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence for over 3 years, and as Commander of a Scientific Technical Intelligence Center, as Commander of a SIGINT wing, and I served 2 combat tours during the Southeast Asia conflict. So I have experienced firsthand the department and IC's collaboration. Since the stand-up of ODNI, the relationship between the department and the community has grown steadily closer. When I first took over as USDI in 2007, I established a dual-hat relationship for the USDI within ODNI. It's called the Director of Defense Intelligence, or DDI. And this position serves as a bridge to enhance an integration, collaboration, and information sharing between the intelligence community and DOD. And Marcel, I must say, has taken this arrangement to the next level. ODNI does the hard work of integrating behind the scenes, so it's never a thought, or shouldn't be, on the front lines. My written statement walks through several examples, from operational support to acquisition oversight to innovations by IARPA, that illustrate the support the IC renders to DOD. But in the interest of time, let me give you one real tangible example of how this works every day. And that is Joint Duty, a program championed and managed by ODNI. DOD knows well how jointness brings great value to the warfighter, and we in the IC adopted this same approach. We learned the hard way how stovepiping and insular approaches to intelligence are not the way to operate. To penetrate those stovepipes, one of the most valuable tools is joint duty, where IC officers serve rotations outside of their home agencies. This is intelligence integration at the most basic level, person to person. The IC's policy not only fosters joint duty, it mandates it for anyone who seeks to become a senior officer. And literally thousands of IC officers have completed joint duty assignments. This is in stark contrast to my war in Southeast Asia, where you rarely saw civilian employees in the war zone. Today, civilians and service members are serving shoulder to shoulder, focusing on the same mission, sharing the same risks, and enduring the same challenging circumstances. And I saw a yet more recent graphic example of that in my visit to Kuwait last week. I cite joint duty as just one of the many ways that we build strong bridges between the IC and DOD. Finally, I want to take note of the fact that Secretary Carter recently presented me with the Department of Defense Distinguished Public Service Award, the highest such award that he can give. The award was not for me. I accepted it on behalf of the men and women of the intelligence community who worked tirelessly to support our missions, many of them directly supporting the warfighters. An award is a symbol of that commitment to mission, and I want to publicly thank the Secretary for so honoring us, the intelligence community. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I did want to comment specifically on the issue of analytic integrity at CENTCOM. I have some very recent information I thought would be useful to share with you. Since we have now 2016 results of our analytic survey, which reflected that 22% of CENTCOM, J2, and JIAC analysts, respondents, experienced objectivity issues. This represents a decrease from 41% in 2015 and is comparable to the 16% who reported issues in 2014. CENTCOM J2 objectivity numbers are on par with the 2016 combat command average of 25% and slightly higher than 2016 IC-wide average of 17%. They also indicate that CENTCOM J2 and JIAC respondents experiencing objectivity issues were more likely to seek assistance to resolve incidents. 60% of CENTCOM J2 respondents experiencing objectivity issues sought assistance, up from 42% in 2015. Of those seeking assistance in resolving objectivity issues at CENTCOM J2 and JIAC in 2016, 67% rated seniors CENTCOM intelligence management as satisfactory at protecting analytic products from deliberate distortion. So I mention this only to make, this is a 1-year period, but it does show a positive trend. And I would also comment that, of course, there's been a change in both the commander and the J2 and CENTCOM, and I think just that, I'm not casting aspersions on the prior incumbent. I just think that a change has been a very positive development. So with that, I'll stop and turn to Secretary Work.
Thank you, Director. Deputy Secretary Work, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Nunez, ranking membership,
Could you get the mic, please?
Sorry, sir.
Director, thank you.
Chairman Nunez, ranking membership, distinguished members of the committee, it's an honor to appear before you today to discuss the support of the Department of Defense has received from the intelligence community. As Chairman Nunez said, this is the unclassified hearing, so it precludes me from getting into any specific details. So let me just state that the support that we receive from the IC community has been absolutely superb. It's great to be here with the Director of National Intelligence, Jim Clapper. There's nobody more qualified. Jim, I'd like to state for the record that Marcel has been tasked by me to find your letter of resignation and lose it, because we would certainly like to see you stay as long as possible. But as Jim gets ready to hang up his spurs, I want to say that Secretary Carter and I are exceedingly grateful to his tremendous contributions to the intelligence community and intelligence support to DOD. He knows better than anyone the value of the DOD's 8 members of the IC bring to the intelligence arena. Marcel Lettre, who's down here, is also my battle buddy in intelligence in the Department of Defense. He's the primary intelligence advisor to the Secretary and me. He's also responsible to Jim in the role of the Director for Defense Intelligence. This dual hat role was established and institutionalized when Jim was the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and it has been a smashing success in our opinion. So I can't overstate the importance of having a USDI team who understands the warfighting requirements, is plugged in closely with the IC community, and appreciates the entire capabilities the IC can bring to bear. Now, we all understand and appreciate the importance of these personal relationships, which is why I comment on them. And thanks to Jim, Marcel, CIA Director John Britton, and the directors of the combat support agencies, the relationship, in our view, between DNI, CIA, the rest of three of the intelligence communities, and DOD have never been better. I've worked in this business now for a little bit over 2.5 years. I've had an opportunity to work not only closely with Jim, but with his principal deputy, Stephanie O'Sullivan. She's one of the 3 members, along with the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Paul Selva. We chair the Advanced Capability and Deterrence Panel, which indicates the close relationship we have between the IC and the department. These relationships and cooperation are absolutely crucial as we seek to allocate our intelligence sources to meet the challenges that Jim spoke about around the world, from fighting ISIL and other extremist groups, monitoring North Korea's very active ballistic missile and nuclear weapons program, ensuring Iran does not develop further nuclear capability, keeping a watchful eye on Russia's actions in the Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and elsewhere, and scrutinizing China's activities in the South and East China Sea. The demands on the intelligence community are formidable, and the IC is working as best as they can, and we would consider their job to be outstanding to try to apply scarce intelligence resources across all of these challenges. The USDI and DNI rely upon several joint forums where the Joint Service Intelligence Chiefs, the Intelligence Combatant Support Agencies, CIA, and the DNI convene, and these are include regular visits to all of our regional and functional combatant commands, participation in the Afghan and the counter-ISIL warfighter senior integration groups, which we call the warfighting SIG, and all of these are designed to address the warfighters' most urgent operational needs. We have 10 combatant commands who have IC representatives on them. That is another indication of how close our relationship is, and their robust presence, even in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and other places worldwide, especially in this zero-sum budget environment, really speaks highly for the mission orientation of the entire IC. So I'm very grateful to be here today, and I'm very grateful for the committee's interest in this area, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Mr. Undersecretary, do you have an opening statement?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have a formal opening statement. I would just like to briefly make 2 points. First is, as Director Clapper and Deputy Secretary Work have indicated, I essentially have 2 reporting chains, reporting to DNI Clapper on the intelligence community side and to the Deputy Secretary and the Secretary on the DOD side, with really my full-time focus and my team's full-time focus being to manage and focus the relationship between the intelligence community and the military and ensure that in both directions, the military is providing support to the intelligence community and the intelligence community is providing support to the military. I think we've had a very interesting, transformative experience since 9/11 in fundamentally integrating those efforts far more than ever before, and I look forward to touching on some of that in the questions and answers today. And the second point, Mr. Chairman, is just to echo the thanks that have been provided around the table this morning. Thanks to the team that I've been able to serve with here on this side, Director Clapper and the Secretary and Deputy, but also to this committee. I suspect that this will be my last opportunity to appear before you before the transition in government in January. I, at an early point in my career, had an opportunity, an honor really, to serve as a staff member on this committee for 3 years, which was an opportunity to learn about the importance of oversight and the critical driver that oversight can be in ensuring that government functions effectively. And I want to just thank the committee for that opportunity early in my career to be able to do that, as well as to have a productive relationship over many years since. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Undersecretary, and that's actually a good segue into our opening questions. We are here in a rare open session for this committee. because we have struggled to get a lot of answers and provide transparency to the public, which is really one of our most important constitutional duties that we have as the legislative branch of government. I have many questions that I want to get through, so I want to try if we can keep your answers as short and concise as possible. First, I'm going to start, and maybe we'll just start with you, Mr. Letcher. This is for all of you. Are you familiar with Wikipedia, the free online encyclopedia?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Clapper?
Generally. Generally, yeah.
Generally, yes, sir.
Does the Department of Defense or the intelligence community edit Wikipedia pages on behalf of the U.S. government?
I really can't speak authoritatively on that. I know I personally have never edited a Wikipedia page.
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think so, but I don't know.
Mr. Wirt?
I have no knowledge whether or not it happens or not, sir.
Okay. Does the DOD or the IC use Wikipedia as an official source of information?
I just don't know, Congressman.
I would have to look into that. I don't know offhand if it has ever been. I don't know.
I know that the department and the IC community uses a lot of open source information. I don't know whether or not Wikipedia is one of those open sources.
Okay. Well, Deputy Secretary Work, on March 21st, you and Director Clapper met with Chairman Thornberry, Chairman Frelinghuysen, and myself to discuss the analysis required by the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2016 regarding the Joint Intelligence Analysis Complex slated to be built at the Croughton Air Base in the UK. Do you recall that meeting?
I do indeed, sir.
Director Clapper, do you recall that meeting?
Yes, I do.
Secretary Work, you informed the committee that Department of Defense did not intend to fully reevaluate lower cost alternative sites for the Intelligence Center. As justification for your decision, you provided the committee with two documents regarding communications infrastructure supporting Lajes Field in Portugal's Azores Islands. I'm going to ask the clerk to please distribute Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, which includes one of the documents provided as justification for the department's decision. Everybody has the documents now. Secretary of Work, are you aware that significant portions of this document that you passed to three committee chairmen to meet a public law were plagiarized from Wikipedia?
Well, sir, I can state with certainty that I did not provide Exhibit 2. I have never seen Exhibit 2.
Well, I can help explain it. Exhibit 2 are the Wikipedia pages that were plagiarized for Exhibit 1 that you provided to meet the public law.
I see. No, I did not know that the information in that document came from Wikipedia.
Okay, so you can see basically all of the graphics in this, what you provided us, everything that's highlighted, that was all taken directly out of what we have in Exhibit 2 to provide to three committee chairmen to fulfill the requirements of the National Defense Authorization Act.
Well, if I may, sir, I would just like to clarify. What I did in that meeting, I was required by the National Defense Authorization Act to make a determination that our movement to Croughton was operationally the right call to make, and I made that determination and communicated my intent to do that. The second thing I needed to do was to certify that there were no DOD missions that could be transferred to Lajes, and I certified that we were not intending to do so. At that meeting, you asked me two questions. You said, what about the housing costs on in lodges, and you questioned me on the communications information. I provided you a piece of one document that was provided to me, I think it was by DISA, and I committed to you to make a deep dive, which I did.
Well, I'm just alarmed, Secretary of Work, that we would rely on Wikipedia, free online encyclopedia that's famously known for most high school students plagiarizing their homework. And that that the Department of Defense would even use Wikipedia, a free online service, to provide any information to Congress to put in any report.
Well, again, Mr. Chairman, this had no bearing on my determination or my certification, which was required by law.
So you're not bothered at all that the Department of Defense, a hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars agency, that anyone in your department would be providing you information to give to the Congress that was plagiarized. And it's not just it was plagiarized off of Wikipedia, it was every single graph in the document was taken from Wikipedia.
Well, again, sir, the costs for the cables were not dispositive.
You're not, Secretary of Work, you're not answering the question here. We need to know whether or not it's appropriate. Is it appropriate to take information off of Wikipedia and provide it to the Congress?
I would say that I'm surprised that this comes directly from a Wikipedia page.
Okay. All right, let me move on because we are going to have votes. Are you aware that the committee first asked for the bandwidth requirements for this intelligence center in early August 2015?
Yes, sir, I am.
Are you aware that the committee again requested communications requirements on May 24th, 2016?
Yes, sir, I am.
Are you aware the committee again requested requirements on October 5th, 2016?
I'm not certain of the exact dates, but I know that we have been in communication. Yes, sir.
Are you aware that the committee finally received this information on the Intelligence Center requirements earlier this week?
I am.
On Tuesday, the Department of Defense Chief Information Officer testified before this committee that Department of Defense leadership decided not to brief committee staff because of the tone of a letter sent from the committee to the Department of Defense. Did you direct the Department of Defense CIO not to provide the requested information to the committee because of the tone of a letter?
No, I did not, but I would like to explain what, in my view, has happened. You called me in September 2015. As the Chief Operating Officer of the Department of Defense, I oversee developing a defense program for the Secretary in accordance with his strategic guidance. As a result, I am responsible for every single aspect of that program. And as you can imagine, certain items do not rise to my level of attention, and certain do. In September 2015, you called me and asked me to personally get involved in reviewing the information that was being provided. And I committed to you that I would. We briefed you and the two other chairmen in March. At that point, you brought up new information that was new to me. You said, I don't believe that you're being served right in the information on the communications, and I don't think you're being served right by the information on housing. I committed you to do a deep dive, which we did. That deep dive was finished in May. Since May, we have been trying to get that information to you. From the very beginning, Mr. Chairman, I thought this was a communication between you and me. You asked me to do this personally for you. All of the interactions that I had were with you and the other chairman, and we offered to provide this information to you. We were told that you would not want to receive it. We actually had a hearing scheduled in September, which was postponed. I regret that this information was not communicated, but we have had the information since since May, and we have been trying to communicate it to you.
So the issue with this was your Chief Information Officer refused to, or the department, I shouldn't say you or the Chief Information Officer, said the reason that you would not brief the committee staff was because of the tone of a letter. But you did remind me of one thing, in that I do remember that phone call, and I just, for the record, you do acknowledge that I informed you that the Congress had been given false or misleading information. in that September phone call.
I understood that was your opinion. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you were informed by this committee that we were provided false and misleading information by the Department of
And I found
Defense.
no indication that that was true.
So I'm going to pass out the email, this Exhibit 3, that went from our staff to the Department of Defense, because I'd like to just ask you, what is the problem with the tone of this letter that would lead the Department of Defense not to send us the requirements for an intelligence center?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't seen this particular one. All I can tell you is you asked me in March to do a deep dive, and I got the absolute best experts in the Department of Defense to do that deep dive. It included the Chief Information
Right,
Officer.
we're the legislative branch of government. We asked in August of 2015, and your Chief Information Officer said that he was told by superiors not to provide the information because of the tone of a letter. This is the letter. And I mean, to me, it seems like a very nice letter. It says, thank you for the quick reply. It even says, thanks for the help.
Mr.
Is there a
Chairman,
problem with the tone of this letter?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what letter Mr. Halverson was talking about. What I can say is that ever since our first meeting, I said it is very important to the three chairmen that we provide this information to them. I want to deal directly with the chairman. I want to provide them with the best information that we have. Everything that you ask or any of the other chairmen ask, we take very seriously.
I appreciate that, but your department, as testimony from just 2 days ago, decided not to send information to this committee because of the tone of a letter, and this is the letter. And I don't see anything wrong with the tone of the letter.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned at the early part of the hour that there are two investigations ongoing, one by this committee and one by the DOD IG, made at your request. Normally, when an IG investigation occurs, we stop all interactions with the committees. But we have said, because this is so important to the chairman, we will continue the interaction with the chairman, and we will be very careful and deliberate on the way that we come forward. I regret that Mr. Halverson used the term tone. I have instructed everyone that we need to be very deliberate because of the close attention that you have placed to this, and I have emphasized to everyone in the chain of command that all of our analysis has to be unimpeachable. And so
Deputy Secretary, I just want to, I understand there are two investigations ongoing, but just so you know, this was August 3rd of 2015. The letter to the DOD IG requesting an investigation was not until 9 months later. So why for 9 months did your department decide not to provide what is really basic information to this committee?
again, sir, when you asked me to get involved in this, I did. I've ordered the deep dive. I have absolute confidence that the J6 on the Joint Staff, the CIO, DISA, and DIA now have come together, worked the information that you requested.
So clearly, Deputy Secretary, you're not responsible for not providing the information, or you don't recall that, but someone in your department told the CIO that. So do you know who would have instructed the CIO not to provide the information because of the tone of a letter?
I don't believe anyone did, and I don't believe that Mr. Halverson was trying to make any aspersion. We believe congressional oversight is extraordinarily important. Since the meeting with you in March, we've had 6 separate letters, I believe. We've provided over 1,000 pages of documents. We've provided 11 people to testify before the committee. There are people being testified. We believe we have been extraordinarily responsive. You mentioned the GAO report.
I'd like to talk about the responsiveness. This committee's investigation has uncovered multiple instances where the Department of Defense provided information to other committees, particularly the Senate Armed Services Committee, months before providing the same information to this committee. Is it the DOD's policy to provide information to the Senate before providing it to the House?
No, sir, it is not.
Then why did it happen?
Again, sir, we have offered to brief this information to you since May, and twice, once when you...
This has nothing to do with that, Secretary of Work. This has to do with information that we asked a year and a half ago that we did not receive. We'll go on. On Monday, the Department of Defense finally provided the committee with the communications requirements. I understand that Lodge's infrastructure, as it is configured today, does not have the desired bandwidth. Did the DOD ever ask telecommunications providers if they could upgrade their infrastructure to support the specific requirements?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer all questions to the experts in the J6, the CIO, DISA, and DIA. However, I have been briefed that it is not normal policy for us to go out and say, what is the art of the possible in the future? We do all our analysis on what is available today.
So when the DOD CIO testified before us 2 days ago, he did indicate that they did not ask the local provider. So now I have this is the same question I asked the other day, which is when our bases around the world need extra bandwidth, do we just not ask and we just start laying cables all over the globe? Or do we ask the local provider, can we increase our bandwidth?
Sir, you have to put this within the context of what this question is about. What was better, Croton or Lodges? There is no comparison. Croton is absolutely the best information hub.
That's not the question. The question was, could the communications infrastructure meet the requirements or not?
I understand that was the question.
That was the question.
But the question you posed to me was whether or not the movement to Croton was operational.
How do you know the answer if you never ask the provider if the local communications infrastructure would work?
I know the answer, sir, because CAPE, who is the best independent cost analysis section that we have in the Department of Defense, took a look at all of the one-time costing factors. They looked at 7. In all of them, there was never an instance where CAPE was able to close the business case for Lodges.
Yeah, we were briefed on the CAPE study. It's quite entertaining. Let me, on September 1st, 2016, you sent a letter to the committee stating that you released funding for Phase 2 of the Intelligence Center construction. When did you release the funding?
Soon after that letter, I assume, sir.
Soon after the letter that was dated on September 1st.
I cannot tell you the exact dates that money transferred, but that was the date that I notified you that we were going to go forward. Yes,
there would
sir.
be no reason for this notification would have been delayed.
I can't imagine one, sir. Now, it might have been delayed simply because of the staffing process of the letter coming up through me. I go through hundreds and hundreds of pages, so perhaps it was delayed slightly.
At the time of your decision, was there an active GIO investigation into this location, into the analysis on this location?
There was an AOA going, an analysis of our AOA, yes.
At the time of your decision, was there an active DOD IG investigation into DOD personnel providing false information to Congress related to this intelligence center?
Yes, and I believe it is ongoing now.
Secretary Lettra, I want to understand how DOD sets requirements for the locations of facilities. We asked you this question earlier this year in closed session, but I want to make sure it's on the record today as well. Does the Department of Defense choose location of facilities based upon where personnel want to live?
We do not. We have a range of factors that go into the decisions about where to base facilities, and particularly when it comes to intelligence facilities, the operational mission orientation and criteria associated with that are the greatest of the factors involved.
So we choose location of intelligence facilities based upon mission requirements?
That's one of a range of criteria that do factor in, but for me, wearing my intelligence hat and with my intelligence responsibilities, the mission relevance and the ability of that location to service the intelligence mission tends to rise to the top of the list, yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop here and we'll come back later, but I'm going to yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Clapper, I wanted to ask you about your parting thoughts on Russia and the threat posed by Russia. You and the Secretary of Homeland Security acknowledged about a month ago that Russia had been hacking in our political institutions and interfering with our election and that this was coming from the highest levels of the Kremlin. What is your assessment of whether that activity is likely to continue into the next administration if President-elect Trump, if a rapprochement between he and Mr. Putin doesn't materialize? Would you anticipate that the Russians will hack and dump documents that might be damaging to a Trump administration? Would that be consistent with what you know of their playbook?
Thanks for the question, sir. I don't anticipate a significant change in Russian behavior. We gave considerable thought to diming out Russia with that statement. We waited until we felt we had sufficient basis for it, and we did, both from a forensic and as well as other sources of intelligence that led us to that statement. It may have had the desired effect, since after that, after the issuance of the statement and the communication that I know took place between our government and the Russian government, it seemed to curtailed the cyber activity that the Russians were previously engaged in. The Russians have a very active and aggressive capability to conduct information operations, so-called hybrid warfare. That's been a long-standing practice of theirs going back to the Soviet era, and I anticipate that it will continue.
Director, I want to drill down a little further into your comment that the Russian activity curtailed after the issuance of the statement. The dumping of documents didn't end with the issuance of the statement. Are you implying by this that that we know whether the documents provided to either cutouts or WikiLeaks had all been provided prior to the statement that was issued? Or is it entirely possible that the dumping of documents continued after the statement, and what may have been avoided was a further escalation of the interference in the form of trying to monkey around on Election Day or thereafter?
I was referring to the cyber reconnaissance that we had observed. Many state entities had observed prior to the statement, and that sort of activity seemed to have curtailed. As far as the WikiLeaks connection, the evidence there is not as strong, and we don't have good insight into the sequencing of the releases or when the data may have been provided. We don't have as good insight into that.
And based on what the Russians have done in Europe and elsewhere, what would you anticipate they would do during the coming administration in terms of their hacking and dumping and active measures campaign in the United States? Director, I think your microphone is off again.
That's hard to say, Congressman Schiff. I can't say what they'll do, and I can't forecast what the impact of our new administration might have on Russian behavior. That's kind of speculative. I just don't know.
Let me ask you about what you can tell us about their intentions vis-a-vis the Minsk Accords and Ukraine. Do you see any intensification of Russian efforts to disrupt the Ukraine or destabilize the Ukraine government? Or do you see efforts in the opposite direction? Are Russian incentives aligned to tamping down the violence there or dialing it up at this point?
I think for now they will sustain their presence in the Donbass. We continue to see firing incidents exchanged along the line of contact And recently, since yet another reaffirmation of the ceasefire, the number of incidents per week has increased. I think both countries will probably engage in actions and counteractions to try to promote instability. And clearly, the Russians want to sustain influence in a traditional part of Greater Russia, which is Ukraine. And so I suspect that sort of pressure will continue. I don't see much prospect for a resolution or compliance with the Minsk Accords. I think we'll just continue this sort of semi-stalemate we're in.
In terms of Russian conduct in the war in Syria, obviously Putin and the Kremlin are aware that the incoming president wants to have a different relationship with Russia. How do you see that as influencing their policy in Syria? Is the Kremlin likely to conclude by that they have more or less a green light to continue the siege of Aleppo or the bombing of civilians? Do you ascribe any significance to the timing of their resumption of that campaign following the discussion with the president-elect?
I can't speculate on what impacts any discussions with the new administration would have, but I can tell you right now the Russians are sustaining their behavior. They are increasingly putting more pressure on oppositionists in Aleppo, indiscriminately bombing women, children, hospitals, this sort of thing. And that will continue. That is having a negative effect on the oppositionists in terms of morale and willingness to continue to fight. And of course, this plays to Assad's objective of achieving a military victory, and that is the position he's in. I think he's probably less interested in any form of negotiations.
Do you foresee any change in the increasing Russian belligerence vis-a-vis NATO countries, their provocative acts in the air and in the sea? Do you see any changes in that in light of a potentially different relationship between the president-elect and the Kremlin?
Well, no, I don't, at least right now. The Russians recently deployed their lone carrier and are conducting some ops off of that. They have sustained the presence of their artillery and the deployment of very advanced air defense systems. And so at least I think that what that indicates that clearly the Russians are there to stay. They want to maintain the presence and the base in Syria is their only base outside the former Soviet Union, a permanent base that they maintain, and I expect they're planning on expanding their presence at Tartus to support naval operations in the Eastern Med.
Let me ask one last question on Russia, sort of the 30,000-foot question, and that is one aspect of the Putin doctrine has been to enhance his own stature at home by provoking confrontation with the West, by framing for his people at home the United States as the Russian equivalent of the Great Satan. How will he square that with his comments or overtures to the president-elect? In other words, does the Kremlin need the American boogeyman to maintain popularity at home, and how will they deal with that conflict if there's a different relationship between the president-elect and the Kremlin?
Well, all I can say here is that clearly Putin has played to this spirit of nationalism, if you want to call it that, in Russia by appealing to the citizenry and I think somewhat as a distraction for, or at least offer compensation for the economic privations that Russian population continues to suffer because of the economic straits they're in and the continued contraction of their economy. And so he does exhort and appeal to the patriotic spirit of the Russian people and to conjure up his standing up to opponents in the West, notably the United States, and as a way of reaffirming in their minds Russian greatness.
Let me ask one last question, both Director Clapper and Secretary Work, about ISIS and the campaign in Syria. There have been a number of statements from the Pentagon about the timing of the campaign against Raqqa. And I've had concerns about whether we have the forces ready to undertake that, whether it's premature. But, you know, there have been public comments about two imperatives of accelerating that campaign. One is an intensification of plotting by ISIS against the United States in Raqqa and the need to move quickly to diminish that threat. And the other is the fear of people, ISIS figures, leaving Mosul and reinforcing efforts in Raqqa. How much are those two concerns driving the timing of that campaign? And how do you ascribe the threat to the United States from ISIS at the moment in terms of their external operations planning and the military trade-off of moving more quickly than maybe the forces are prepared, but the necessity of cutting people off that are fleeing Mosul?
Thanks for the question, sir. First of all, the campaign design, which was settled on about a year ago today, is generally going along the lines of which we expected. It always was to isolate Mosul and Raqqa and then to reduce them. We are farther ahead on the Mosul campaign because we have reliable partners on the ground. The Iraqi security forces, especially their counterterrorism service, have really been getting after the bad guys. Throughout this time, we've been providing a lot of support and going after the external operations leaders, both in Iraq and Syria. That's the president's and the secretaries and everybody's #1 concern, going after the external ops guys, and we are really having a lot of success in doing so. The campaign to isolate and reduce Raqqa was always #2 in the queue. This SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, are the isolation force, and they are in the process of isolating Raqqa. And the force that will ultimately reduce Raqqa is now being determined among all of the actors in the region. Meanwhile, we continue to hit every single external ops guy, either al-Nusra Front or al-Qaeda in Syria or ISIL, and we are having a lot of success in doing so.
I don't think we can make a direct correlation between, as the pressure increases on the caliphate and it shrinks, that we can relate that directly, or we don't have any evidence that that somehow heightens the threat to the homeland or threat of external attack. That's been a constant with ISIL anyway, and I don't think there's a direct relationship between diminishment of their territory and the magnitude of that threat. It is still a concern of ours. As Secretary Work indicates, we've had a lot of success in taking out both leaders of the external operations and some of their lower level people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I yield back.
Mr. Conaway is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I hadn't intended to ask this, but since the ranking member is pursuing it, Russia Today, the propaganda arm of Putin, it's well-funded, really effective, RT, the television programs, they have a scheme, a playbook that says if we can force the Americans to question each other about what's going on in their country, and they win. How does the ranking member's line of questioning relative to trying to create some sort of a sinister link between whatever Mr. Trump might or might have done versus Putin. How does that play into the playbook that RT has been successful at, in your opinion? As trained professionals, intelligence professionals, is that in fact exactly what RT is trying to get done, trying to get us to do?
Well, they've incurred some budget cuts, the RT network, and have not been all that successful in conveying messages here in the United States. Now, they do certainly broadcast elsewhere, and that's exactly what they try to do, particularly in Europe. If having traveled there and watched RT, they are focusing much more, I think, on Europe than the United States.
Well, but it is their playbook, though, to, if you look at what they did in Ukraine and other places, to get the citizens to turn on themselves to go after it. So it appears to me that whole line of questioning that you're going to hear all day today will be playing directly into the RT's playbook, and they are quite successful in Europe, and they're coming here as well. Turning from that, though, we've been at a fight in Afghanistan and Iraq for a long, long time. Can you, surely we're better at coordinating intelligence, providing intelligence to DOD. Can you give us 2 or 3 examples where we are better today than we were when we first started this, some lessons learned kind of thing that are now part of the norm versus what happened in
You mean
first
in
started?
terms of sharing intelligence with
Yes.
DOD?
Yeah, well, gathering it, sharing it, and just, are you guys better today than you were in 2003 when this thing started?
Oh, I think so.
All right, so can you give us 2 or 3 examples of where that's the case?
Well, I don't think I can go into specifics in this setting. I do know I visited Kuwait and the task force command there last week and was briefed on some very graphic examples of the contributions that the national agencies make, specifically NSA, NGA, and DIA, to the warfighting effort there. And General Townsend very high in his praise of what the intelligence community is doing on his behalf. And of course, this is, I think, emblematic of the relationship because of the fact that these are combat support agencies in DOD as well as parts of the intelligence community.
Let me ask
Happy to give you specific examples that will be classified that would illustrate
That'd
that.
be fine. You mentioned joint duty and the successes that's gone. Early on, I had some questions as to the impact it would have on the personnel's career paths if they left their home agency or home units and went somewhere else. Can you talk to us about the impact it's had on career development for those folks who have participated by going to other agencies, as well as are commanders willing to give up their best and brightest to go to, is DOD giving up the best and brightest to go to the intel agencies and vice versa? Are we, from a personnel standpoint, is this joint duty working the way that you intended it?
Congressman, I'll take a first crack at this. In my experience, the joint duty program for intelligence officers really has sought to model a lot of the successes of the joint tours of duty on the military side under Goldwater-Nichols, which have been successful driving that integration over the last 30 years for the military. The same is starting to play out in the intelligence joint duty program. My observation is that in almost all cases, individuals who serve a joint duty gain experiences that make them far more valuable and developed as leaders for the intelligence community upon completion of that joint duty tour. That said, one of the things that we need to continue to work on in the years ahead is how to make that in and out, or the return back to the home organization even more effective, so that in a seamless way they're able to come back to their home organization to the right kind of job that fully leverages that joint assignment.
We've had to go to school on this a bit, on managing this arrangement. It's obviously easier, more convenient when you manage a workforce that's self-contained within a particular agency. I know in my own headquarters where we have maintained 40% of our workforce are detailees from other components. And you do have to pay attention to that, manage their assignments ensure they get appropriate ratings and bonuses where appropriate. And I think, though, that the enrichment of the force and the professional capability of the force is far better. You know, there's been really a profound sociological change in the entire intelligence community. There are thousands of employees who have deployed civilian employees have deployed multiple times since 9/11. And that has had, I think, a profound change in the professionalism and identification with the mission of our civilian employees.
All right, Director Clapper, thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Let me go. Mr. Quigley's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service. Mr. Clapper, a word of advice. You talk about retirement. You mentioned your wife. A friend of mine recently retired, and his wife said, I married you for better or worse, but I didn't marry you for lunch. So good luck on that. In the time we have, could you give us a little bit of your thoughts concern the homeland and security? What are your priorities or chief concerns besides cyber or Orlando-type attacks? To me, it's a concern that the attacks could be more generated from outside, but also less sophisticated and therefore harder to stop or even know about.
Well, you've touched on what is, of course, a great concern to us, not so much the massive complex attack that we suffered on 9/11, but rather those caused by individuals or small cells of people. That is a tremendous challenge for us. One of the things I've tried to work in my time as D&I is promoting not only the horizontal integration across our IC agencies, but also vertically with this state, local, tribal, and private sector. I think we've made a lot of improvement there. I will, for example, be meeting with my Homeland Security and Law Enforcement Advisory Group tonight, which is an outstanding group of chiefs of police and law enforcement intelligence representatives who do great work. I think the creation and operation of fusion center network across the country, which are increasingly becoming interneted, is a great bulwark against foreign attacks. But I will leave this job concerned about the impact of so-called lone wolves or homegrown violent extremism. That is a very complex problem. It requires, I think, first and foremost, community involvement. I think intelligence law enforcement can do so much to help clarify the picture on what that threat is.
Congressman, may I just add that in addition to the counterterrorism and cyber types of threats that the director mentioned, on the military side, we also think about threats to the homeland from more traditional military capabilities, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and so forth. And one of the main projects we have underway is to look at how to improve our intelligence indications and warning to be able to better respond to those types of contingencies as well. So I think it's important to think about the full spectrum of threats to the homeland that we face.
And I've heard several talk about the effects of sequestration on our protection of the homeland. What concerns me, and if you could add a thought, and I know it doesn't come out of this committee necessarily, but Homeland Security grants to local governments cut by 50% roughly in the last 5 years. Transportation security grants, 75%. The infrastructure aspects like setbacks and ballards were zeroed out. Your thoughts, if you may?
Well, sequestration is the specter of sequestration, which of course runs through 2021, continues, and it has impact potentially has impact across the board. And that's something we struggle with every program year, and of course the uncertainty that creates and the painful trades we have to make you know, that's a fact of life, and it's got to be, programmatically, it's gotten to be the new normal now. We've been living with it for about 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Mr. Pompeo is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions are for Director Clapper and Deputy Secretary Work. I sit on a joint task force along with Mr. Calvert and Mr. Wenstrup that was looking into the manipulation of intelligence at Central Command. Have both of you had a chance to read the interim report that the task force filed?
You mean the committee report?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I've read it.
Mr. Work?
I've not read it in detail, sir.
In that, there are pretty clear cases of intelligence manipulation, and my question is, what accountability for any person associated with that has been held to date? Mr. Work?
Sir, what we have been waiting on is the completion of the IG
Mr.
investigation.
Work, it's been, just for the record, it's 2 years. We have soldiers in the field, and we had intelligence that wasn't getting to the right place to keep these young men and women safe so that we could make good policy decisions. It's been 2 years. To tell a soldier that you're waiting on an IG report is unacceptable. Tell me who's been held accountable.
I would have to ask Undersecretary of Defense Letcher if any particular people have been held accountable. What the Secretary and I have said over and over and over again, we expect the highest standards in the intelligence community.
Did we get that, Mr. Work? Did our
well,
soldiers get that?
The IG report will tell us, but as Director Clapper spoke to, the overall assessment is that we are improving.
Congressman, I'll just add, we are not able to take authoritative personnel-related actions on these instances and allegations until the IG investigation is done. It has taken quite a while. I think we are as eager as this committee is to get the results of that IG investigation and be able to take action on those. In the interim, there are some systemic and management actions that we have taken on the DOD side, working closely with Director Clapper and his team. First and foremost, as Director Clapper mentioned, in the natural changeover of duties at Central Command with the commander and the J2, we both have, along with General Stewart, the Director of DIA, strongly emphasized the need for the J2 to look at its business practices and ensure that all analysts have the ability to call it like they see it and speak truth to power. In addition, more broadly across the enterprise, we've taken a number of initiatives to reinforce the importance of analytic integrity. We're in the process of ensuring that every organization has an analytic ombudsman in place, someone that analysts can come to anonymously and report concerns that they may have and have an advocate to senior leaders and a number of other initiatives.
I'm glad you're doing those things. Those all sound great to me. I have to tell you that the American people and our soldiers and sailors, airmen, and Marines deserve not to wait 2 years to hold accountable folks who put bad information in the field. Director Clapper, there are reports, press reports that indicate that there was information withheld from a presidential daily briefing until after General Austin had testified. Are you aware of the reports, and if so, are those reports accurate?
I'm aware of the reports, and the examination done by our analytic integrity officer didn't find any substantiation of that.
There are also press reports, Director Clapper, that you had, and our task force also looked into this, that you had direct conversations with General Groves with great frequency, circumventing the chain of command there, and yet you testified that, quote, intelligence, this was before the Senate Armed Services Committee, intelligence assessments from CENTCOM come to the national level only through the DIA. How do you square conversations that you're having with the J2 at one command with that testimony?
The conversations I had with the J2 by VTC were only for tactical updates, not to discuss broad assessments. And I will also comment that in every one of these, there was a split screen, and the JCS J2 was always represented in these dialogues. So the reference to assessments finding their way into, say, national intelligence estimates or PDB articles is done through the Defense Intelligence Agency, not direct from CENTCOM or any other combatant command.
Great. Thank you, Director Clapper. Director Clapper, President Obama removed Iran Air's designation as a proliferator of weapons of mass destruction on January 15, 2016, as part of the JCPOA. Did Iran Air's activities change in any way to prompt this removal?
I believe, if I'm correct, Iran is still a state sponsor of terrorism. I don't think we've reclassified Iran.
Right, no, that's my question. But the president removed Iran Air's designation as a proliferator of weapons of mass destruction and a provider of material support to the IRGC as part of the JCPOA, or simultaneously with the JCPOA more properly. Can you tell me if Iran Air's behavior changed in any way or has changed to justify such a removal?
I can't say that Iran's behavior has changed. It has continued aggressive missile development and missile fielding. I think in terms of its proliferating to other countries, I don't think, I can't, I'd have to research that and provide on a classified basis if we have information on that.
Thank you, Director Clapper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Himes is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. I want to devote my 5 minutes to the topic of cybersecurity. And in particular, let me start with you, Director Clapper, and thank you for your service. We really appreciate all that you have done over the length of a long career. I'd like to start with you. Let me give you the bulk of the time here. What I'm really interested in is not achievements and the progress we've made, because clearly we have with the Integration Center and everything else, but as you think about withdrawing from the field, what would you identify as the top most specific weaknesses, unaddressed vulnerabilities, areas of focus for both the IC and this committee in terms of our defense against cyber threats?
Well, we need to, I think, make a very healthy investment in the National Intelligence Program on intelligence to support cyber threats. Obviously, it would always be not good to have more money, but I think it's as a proportion of everything else that we have to look at, I think we're in reasonably good shape. I think the challenge for us is always going to be the fundamental fact that the internet is insecure. And any time you have a dependency on the internet, we're going to be playing catch up and reaction to defending our networks. The other issue I would mention is the creation of both the substance and the psychology, I guess, of deterrence in the cyber realm. That's been a challenge. The issue there is whether you react on a binary basis or symmetrical basis. If you have a cyber assault and you react in a cyber context, or do you retaliate some other way? I think that is going to be a challenge for the country.
Could I just stop you there and ask a question? Is the challenge there, as you identify it, one of the development of doctrine, or is it a technical issue?
I think it's more a development of a doctrine and policy, and developing a body of law through experience. It took hundreds of years to develop law of the sea, which is maybe a rough analog to where we are with cyber, and we haven't had enough time yet, I think, to develop that body of law. And that until such time as there are some norms developed and we have a firm definition of what deterrence means, and that's recognized by both state and non-state actors, we're going to have a problem with cyber defense.
Let me ask one specific question on the topic. The committee spent obviously a great deal of time in the creation of the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act. How are we doing with respect to the private sector working with security agencies to address the cyber threat? Is there enough communication there? Is there more that can be done?
I think there is. And this is a shared responsibility across the IC. The FBI is involved, and of course, very importantly, the Department of Homeland Security. This too, I mean, when you say engagement with the private sector is that's as big as all outdoors, and finding the right and keeping active the right conduits so that we can share. And by the way, the sharing needs to be two ways, both from them to us and from them and from us to them. I think there's a lot of improvement that has been made. I think the Department of Homeland Security has made huge strides here. That's not to say there's not more to do.
Okay. Thank you. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Work.
A couple things. In terms of cybersecurity, the number one thing we're trying to do is secure our networks. We've made a lot of progress on this. We're also building up our cyber workforce. We should be have all of the cyber mission teams in FY17 and making sure we have the right people. The other thing we're really worried about now, and we're looking at hard, are the Internet of DOD things. All of our weapon systems that we generally operate today were designed in an era where cybersecurity threats were not all that stressing. So going through all of the different systems that we have, identifying the cyber vulnerabilities and prioritizing those has been a big focus on the department. We have a cyber scorecard that is briefed to the Secretary and I every month to 6 weeks, and we are looking at all of these different factors on trying to improve our cybersecurity. We have a long way to go, but we've made a lot of progress.
Thank you. Thank you. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman yields back. Mr. Calvert's recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Clapper, for your service. We've known each other for a number of years. I'd like to get back into this CENTCOM discussion and the reason why we investigated this in the first place. As you remember, General Jim Mattis left abruptly in 2013. The Directorate of Intelligence pretty much remained in place for the first part of 2014 under General Austin. And around June, that changed. There was a turnover of people over at CENTCOM, and intelligence started coming out regarding Mosul, which is again in the news today, which was inaccurate. I think everybody can look back at that now and say, yeah, Mosul did fall. It didn't have the capabilities that some people thought. But the intelligence since then has been in dispute. As you know, 40% of the workforce, twice the number of typical combatant commands, felt that their analysts, the final product has been somewhat distorted. And through our review, many of those employees to this day believe that the culture at CENTCOM has been somewhat toxic, to use the word that came up time and time again. Right now, we're back in Mosul again. We have people there. How do we know that the intelligence that's coming out of CENTCOM today is any more reliable than the intelligence that was coming out 2 years ago?
Well, we don't depend only on CENTCOM for intelligence reporting. In fact, one of the reasons why I do consult with them is to ensure that we are on the same page. So we have other assets, national assets, that tell us whether what we're seeing operationally or what we're hearing reported operationally comports with what we're seeing through intelligence. And at least my observations through the current Mosul campaign are that they do.
Well, as you know, we have the largest number of folks working in intelligence at CENTCOM than any of the combatant commands. We spend quite a bit of money, appropriate quite a bit of money to make sure that these folks are well-equipped and well-manned to make sure that they provide the best intelligence to the warfighter and to the combatant commander as possible. Are you confident that that's occurring today, that the intelligence is coming out of CENTCOM has improved? Because I think it's beyond dispute that we had a problem 2 years ago. And has that problem been cleared up, and is it continuing to get cleared up right now?
I'm somewhat removed from the command, but from what I've observed, that's the case. And I don't know if you were here, sir, earlier when I quoted the latest statistics from our analytic survey, which reflect a positive trend. And so the number of respondents reflecting analytic integrity issues has declined. And importantly, their comments on management response when they did have issues has increased. And so that the behavior, the reflections of this at CENTCOM are beginning to level out and comport with all the other combatant commands. I do think there is, by virtue of the change in commanders and the change in the J2, that has been a change in the atmosphere there. And so I've been encouraged by the trends, particularly this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to tell the members we have 3 votes now and then a motion to recommit with 10 minutes debate. So I'm going to try to keep this open through those 3 votes where members can try to go and come back, so if possible. But then at the end of the motion to recommit, we'll have to end the hearing. Mr. Murphy's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your time. Back to cyber real quick. Director Clapper, how important do you think it is that we have some sort of rules of engagement with cyber that adversaries know, whether they're state-sponsored or not, that they know that there will be a response, that we move out of this gray area? How important is that?
Well, again, this gets to the point about developing a body of law, and conveying those messages is much easier with nation states because everyone recognizes that there are mutual vulnerabilities. The greater challenge, at least for my part, is on non-nation state entities, which over time are going to develop more capabilities in the cyber realm to render attacks. And so I think the notion of building a sense of deterrence, the psychology of deterrence in non-nation state entities is going to be difficult. I think there's certainly progress with the Chinese as a result of the agreement that was struck in September of 15. And we'll have to see whether that is continued. But I think the greater challenge is non-nation state entities.
With things moving as quickly as they do with technology, cyber, how has your experience been, and do you feel as director, for recruiting the best talent in the world to make sure we are a step ahead?
I think we have sustained our level of recruitment, and we continue to be able to bring great young people into the community. The greater challenge, though, is retention. And they'll come to us either as young civilians or military, and then they become very, very attractive and very appealing to the commercial sector. Right. And so then we have a challenge there with retaining people in the face of some pretty appealing compensation packages that a lot of our people that have had experience in the intelligence community get, and that makes them very attractive.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't pick your brain just briefly in what you think, and based on your experience, over the next 5 to 10 years, the greatest threats we face as a nation, what we are doing to address that, and what we should be doing, especially with a new administration coming in. What is your advice, big picture, to them?
Are you speaking only of cyber or just general?
In general.
Well, that's a hard question to answer because from an intelligence perspective, we have to be alert to all of these threats. I wish I could rank them and pick and choose which ones to worry about, but unfortunately, they're all a problem for us. So whether it's the nation-state challenges posed by the likes of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, or transnational concerns like counterterrorism, like proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which is personally a growing concern for me. The challenges posed in the cyber dimension. We have to, and our approach has been to try to maintain a balance so that we can detect and address the full range of threats. So I'm hesitant to try to pick one that says this is the one that's going to confront us or is going to be the worst for us over the next 5 or 10 years.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Winstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to hear that things are better at CENTCOM. I have served on that investigation, and clearly we have concerns about what went on in 2015, and I know that's been addressed to some degree. Secretary of Work, what are the root causes, in your opinion, of the unacceptable command climate that was existing at CENTCOM during that time?
Well, this is something that Secretary Carter and I have discussed. We want to know what happened and why it happened. We have been looking to Director Clapper and Undersecretary of Defense Lettra to say, look, this is what we think the problems were. We have really tried to get after it. The thing that the Secretary and I, trying to stay above the IG investigation, is simply to say we expect all of our intel analysts to have full freedom to say what they need to say, to speak truth to power. We expect the chain of command to pass that information up the chain. Every decision we make on the campaign is based on the assumption of good intelligence. So it's very important to us, and we're awaiting the judgments of the intelligence professionals on how we can improve.
When do you expect that we will get that? I mean, this has been quite a while. We've gotten a lot of information just on our committee and our investigation. Open source news has provided much information. When do you expect that we're going to get something back? Because it's hard to right or wrong if you just keep playing around with it. And how do we avoid it from happening again if we're taking way too much time in figuring out why it happened and where it happened? And we've pretty much honed it down to the section in the chain where things seem to change. So what are we waiting for? Why is this taking so long when we have gathered so much information and this isn't even our full-time job to investigate it?
So one of the hardest jobs it is as a senior leader in the department is to be patient when these type of investigations are ongoing. I can't tell you exactly when it will be finished.
Well, I don't know that you should be patient, actually. I think that it's time that we come forward, let the American people know what was taking place, at least let this committee understand what had been taking place. Hopefully it is corrected. Frankly, I'm surprised that you're content with 25% in the survey as being an acceptable number. I would be shooting for a lot less than that. And you're free to comment, Mr. Clapper, Director Clapper, if you'd like to.
Well, I think it's a good thing to bear in mind here that we're having, this is a debate about subjective subjects, where there can be room for honest analytic disagreement, because we're always operating from incomplete or less than perfect facts. And so people who are experts in this can have and do have honest disagreements. So I don't find the figure, again, given the subjectivity of the subject matter, I don't find that alarming, and that is pretty much on a par with the behavior. I'd be more concerned if it were zero. If there were no disagreement, no dissent anywhere, anytime, that would be that would be disturbing to me. I'd want to know why that's so.
I can understand that argument for the 25%, but I sure can't for the 40%, sir. That just doesn't fly in the face of what's going on at the other commands, and it's certainly unacceptable. And the fact that we've had so many whistleblowers come forward certainly speaks volumes. And, you know, we have an obligation here to have oversight. Lives depend on this, as you well know. Lives depend on the type of reporting that's going up. So we've had plenty of testimony on our side. There certainly should be something that the IG should come forward with us, and very soon, not just try to run out the clock. And I would think that before you go, sir, that this is something you would want to have resolved and taken care of.
Yes, it is, sir, because your report took me and the rest of the intelligence community to task for seemingly sitting on our hands and not doing anything, not taking any corrective action about this when we were enjoined not to because of the DOD IG. And so, yes, I would like it very much to get resolved. I think in the interest of General Grove, who's since moved on to another assignment, exactly what the IG finds would be very important, and would be great if it happened before I leave. And if I may, I do need to clarify about my statement about resignation. It's not effective until noon on January 2017, not immediate, as has been being reported in the media.
Well, I appreciate your time and service to the country, and I hope that this is wrapped up and rectified so that we can move forward in a positive way before you leave, sir. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Castro is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony this morning. Director Clapper, thank you for your service to the nation in this role and so many others before it. We appreciate it very much. We've just come off of unprecedented intrusion by foreign government in our democratic process after an election that finished just last week, and also unprecedented intrusion by a director within our own intelligence community in our democratic process. So based on those two things, I have a few questions. The first is, do we know whether the Russian government or those responsible for the hacking of the Democratic National Committee and other democratic groups shared any information with any American or Americans during the last year and a half?
So I'd rather not respond right off the top of my head, and in any event, this would probably be best left to a classified session.
Okay, thank you. I'll be sure to follow up with you all on that. The second question is, as head of the U.S. intelligence community, do you believe that Director Comey breached any protocol in his actions during the last month?
I have no reason to question Director Comey. I think extremely highly of him, and so whatever actions he took, he did so in what he felt was the best, and I have no basis for questioning that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. I don't know if Mr. Schiff is coming back or not, but I'm going to get back to some of the remaining questions that I have, so I'll just try to get through them quickly. Secretary of Work, are you familiar with the decision by UCOM in 2011 where the requirement for the new intelligence center was to be an hour outside of London?
I do know that an AOA that was conducted by the European Command suggested that we should consolidate the JIAC at RAF Croughton. Yes, sir.
Right, but the requirement was specifically to be an hour outside of London. Are you aware of this requirement?
I'm not aware of a specific requirement. I know of the AOA and the analysis that was done to support the move.
Mr. Clapper, Director Clapper, are you aware of the requirement to be an hour outside of London?
No, I'm not.
So we learned, this committee has learned through the investigation that the decision was made before an AOA was ever completed. And as the GAO found, there's no, the GAO claims that despite DOD's claims that they looked at 16 locations, 15 of the 16 alternatives there's no documentation on 15 of the 16 other alternatives other than Crownton, because 15, do you know what happened to this documentation?
No, sir. I do know that the GAO investigation occurred approximately 6 years after that was done. So one of the things they did say that we were lacking documentation, but the most important conclusion that they made was that our actions were sufficiently reliable for the purpose of describing DOD's rationale for choosing RAF Crownton at the location for JIAC consolidation. That, to me, is a pretty much slam dunk.
Except to the fact that this committee cannot find any documentation of any work being done on 15 of the 16 sites that you supposedly looked at.
Sir, all I can say is that three different secretaries of defense, 5 four-star combatant commanders, 1 Navy, 1 Air Force, 2 Army, 1 Marine, 2 undersecretaries of defense for intelligence, the current DNI, the current PDNI. We've had 3 successive AOAs. These AOAs were looked at in an audit by the GAO, and they said that our conclusions were sufficiently reliable for the purpose of making our decision. So in my view, we've looked at this 3 different times. Congress itself has agreed with our finding by funding phase 1 of the project, and they also approved phase 2, subject to my determination and certification that we spoke to earlier.
So it's okay, you think it's okay that there is no evidence that shows that you ever looked at 15 of the 16 sites?
Well, I'll have to go back and look at all, it was described by GAO, Mr. Chairman, as the DOD body of evidence. Another finding straight out of the GAO report is DOD has provided the required information in response to committee direction and statutory provisions. So,
well, we have evidence that a commander's decision brief was done in 2011, where the requirement was an hour outside of London, and we've had people testify to that fact. After the fact, it just appears like there's no information. So despite, you can do all the studies you want, but if you have people come to this committee and say, well, we're not going to give Congress the answers because we don't like the tone of a letter, you delay those answers. I'm sorry, I mean, there's just no evidence here that shows that essentially someone just wanted to go to Crownton back in 2011, and that's the decision that was made then, and everything since then, there's no documentation to document why that decision was made. Let me go to Director Clapper. On July 27, 2015, I visited you in your office and informed you that a whistleblower had approached the committee indicating that false information had been provided to the committee regarding the Intelligence Center. Do you remember that meeting?
Yes.
In the same meeting, and again on March 21st, this year, you told Chairman Thornberry, Chairman Frelinghuysen, and myself, if we moved the Intelligence Center outside of the London suburbs, that IC civilians and contractors would not move to the new location. Can you explain why that's the case?
No, I don't think I said that, sir. I think what I said was that based on briefings I had received at Jack Molesworth, that the civilians there probably would not move to lodges. That was a specific reference, but a general statement that they wouldn't go anywhere else, I don't believe I ever said that.
Oh, so so they would go other places, but not lodges?
Well, I don't know. The specific issue that I was briefed on was the reaction to the possibility of a move to Lodges Air Base in the Azores.
And this was a briefing by DOD civilians or contractors?
No, this was a briefing from the commander when I visited there sometime, I'm not sure when.
The commander of the
JAC.
Intelligence Center, of the JAC, said that the civilians would not move to lodges.
Well, yes, these are older people, that have children in schools, particularly high school age, and I don't think the general reaction to that, to move to an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean was not very positive. And of course, that's been compounded by the Section 414 of the of the Intelligence Authorization Act, taking away their housing allowance, which is a very discriminatory and very negative impact not only on DIA civilians, but on IC employees in general.
So it sounds like we are making decisions based on where people want to live.
No, you know, this whole issue of moving or not was kind of a wash to me. I didn't get involved in it until there was some potential for expense to the National Intelligence Program. And of course, as I got into this and discovered with the potential morale impacts and the fact that people would probably not take their families to Lodges Air Base in light of the facilities that they knew weren't there.
Are you aware that the Azore Islands are a popular vacation spot for people from the U.S. and Europe and have daily flights?
No, I'm not.
Do we have trouble getting people to move to Hawaii?
Actually, we do, because there are issues there with compensation for the very high cost of living. So that's problematic as well.
But the cost of the living in the Azores is low. So why would that, so it doesn't seem to have that problem? I mean, both are vacation spots.
Well, I think, you're talking about Hawaii?
Yeah. Last I checked, Hawaii was a popular vacation spot.
Oh, it is. It's a very popular vacation spot. So you spend a lot of money for a week or two, but living there permanently, supporting a family, that sort of thing. I've spent 2 tours in Hawaii, and it's quite expensive.
So the Azores is also a vacation spot, and it has the cheapest cost of living in Western Europe. Why would that not be a place that people would go to?
Well, in Hawaii, there are high schools, and there are medical facilities, and there are PXs and commissaries, and that's kind of lacking right now at Lodges.
Well, last I checked, I don't think there's anything lacking there through the work that we've done at this committee. I don't know if Mr. Schiff is going to be back or not. Have we heard? Is he on his way back? Okay. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for appearing here today. The committee remains deeply concerned about these issues. We look forward to the IG CENTCOM report and the IG's report on false information and misleading information provided to Congress. Hopefully, the IG can get to the bottom of these problems and help the committee uncover what exactly has happened here. Our robust oversight will continue the remainder of this year and into the next Congress. But I want to thank all of you for your service and for your attendance here today. Hearing's adjourned.